profits from that, but so does the CDC. That's its largest source of income, is vaccine revenue. So there's a conflict of interest. The agency telling us that we need the vaccines and put all these vaccines now up to 72 in the first 6 years of life, they get a profit off every one of those vaccines. And then you have all the scientists who get to share in the profits. So what is the likelihood that greed and one's own financial stability will outweigh the moral conviction of doing the right thing? That is a question. And also now we're seeing, coming out of the woodwork, we're seeing all these highly respected voices today. The Connecticut pathologist, Dr. Sin, S-I-N, Hang Lee, H-A-N-G-L-E-E, and the Informed Consent Action Network have petitioned the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to require accurate counts of COVID cases in the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine trial. And until an accurate count of COVID-19 cases in the vaccinated and placebo groups has been determined for vaccine efficacy evaluation, we're asking the FDA to stay its decision regarding the emergency use authorization of the vaccine. That's according to Dr. Lee at his molecular diagnostic laboratory. And he's a heavyweight, by the way. He is highly respected in his field. He's one of the best of the best. And they have raised very serious concerns about, let us see all of the evidence. In fact, a recent petition to the European Medicines Agency to stay the COVID-19 vaccine trials used similar arguments regarding the inaccuracy of the PCR test being used in the need for confirmatory sequencing. And on December 1st, Switzerland's medical regulator, Swissmedic, said it lacks the necessary information to approve 3 different coronavirus vaccines ordered by the government, including the Pfizer vaccine. So you have to understand what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a massively powerful, politically connected, media-savvy industries that have dictated public health policy. And we, the public, are just like with the swine flu, we're just trusting. Now, if they can prove that the vaccines they're developing are safe, long-term, and effective at preventing this, and they've done none of the above. They gave us a press release, not peer-reviewed scientific studies that allow the top virologists, immunologists, pathologists to examine the data. And this was a leading American pathologist who simply said, we want to see the evidence. And we were also told that millions of Americans now are shown to be cases of COVID. That's an out-and-out lie. That's a complete fabrication. There is no truth to that. Why? Because everyone everywhere is lining up to get their COVID test through the PCR. You will hear this week from the developer of the PCR, who won the Nobel Prize, Dr. Perry Moss. I just reviewed 6 hours of his tape yesterday, where he is stating, don't use this as a viral diagnostic. It does not give you a viral load. It doesn't tell you the newness. It doesn't tell you the uniqueness. It just shows there's a particle there that we keep amplifying and amplifying and amplifying until it goes beyond where it can actually be used. And right now, the people doing the diagnostics with that PCR, they're amplifying that up around 35 or more times. Beyond 25 times, it's junk science. It doesn't mean anything. Also, what about the vast majority of people who are getting the test and it shows that they have some particle, some piece, some infinitesimal, insignificant, non-pathological piece in there? They'll test positive. Now they're a case, but a case is a clinical case with symptoms which needs to be helped and treated, ideally with a non-toxic approach. If you're at home, you can do a lot. My suggestion is the non-toxic medicines that have been shown to kill the coronavirus and prevent you from going from mild symptoms to major symptoms. That would be the most reasonable approach. And it's been shown in hundreds of millions of cases to work throughout the world in the last 65 years, like hydroxychloroquine. But the establishment, mainly the Democratic leadership, not the liberals, that's different. Those of us who have been liberals our whole life, far more left than many of the people who call themselves liberals, those people have politicized everything. They're on the side of Big Pharma. Just look where they get their money. And they say, test positive, get the test, get the vaccine. But then you're not told the truth about the vaccine. So you see, there's a lot of misinformation. And I'm not the one telling you this. I'm merely providing a platform for highly respected credentials doctors from their table. They're sitting at their table, orthodox science, orthodox medicine's table, and they're saying this. But you won't hear their voices. You won't see them in debates anywhere, because they would win and the public would then have a pause. And there's a whole campaign now to attack anyone who challenges the safety and efficacy of anything being promoted by the COVID leadership. Here's just one 4-second clip, because if you're asymptomatic, they want you to immediately quarantine positive. You're positive, but you're asymptomatic. Remember, you could have had a cold 10 years ago, and now you're positive. For something that's 10 years old, your body's got rid of it. This is the junkyard inside the system where these dead viruses, particles remain, that'll test you positive if you get high enough amplification of a fraudulent study test. And here's what the CDC's top person on this had to say.
To truly answer this question, it still appears to be rare that an asymptomatic individual actually transmits onward.
Okay, you heard her say it, not me. She's saying it. Then why aren't we encouraging these people? Okay, you tested positive, but you're asymptomatic. All right. Why don't we take care of the healthy people by allowing them to return to work? Because the more people who get the test, the more are going to test positive. That does not mean they're sick or will get sick. The ones who are going to get sick and die first are the older people with comorbidities. But everybody being quarantined same time, the same environment. More suicides occurred in Japan because of quarantine than died of COVID. Shouldn't that tell you something? Probably one of our finest oracles for the last 30 years is Chris Hedges. Chris had this to say. This is an article in Sheer Post. It's being posted on PRN.FM today. It's called The Collective Suicide of the Liberal Class. Quote, liberals who express dismay, or more bizarrely, a fevered hope about the corporatists and imperialists selected to fill the positions in the Biden administration are the court jesters of our political burlesque. They long ago sold their soul and abandoned their most basic principles to line up behind a bankrupt Democratic Party. They chant with every election cycle the mantra of the least worst and sit placidly on the sidelines as a Bill Clinton or Barack Obama and the Democratic Party leadership betray every issue they claim to support. The only thing that mattered to liberals in the presidential race, once again, was removing a Republican, this time Donald Trump, from office. This the liberals achieved, but their Faustian bargain in election after election has shredded their credibility. They are ridiculed, not only among right-wing Trump supporters, but by the hierarchy of the Democratic Party that has been captured by corporate power. No one can or should take liberals seriously. They stand for nothing. They fight for nothing. The cost is too onerous. And so the liberals do what they always do, chatter endlessly about political and moral positions they refuse to make any sacrifice to achieve. Liberals largely comprise the professional managerial class that dutifully recycles and shops for organic produce, is concentrated on the two coasts, have profited from the ravages of neoliberalism. They seek to endow it with a sense of civility, but their routine and public humiliation has ominous consequences. It not only exposes the liberal class as hollow and empty, it discredits the liberal democratic values they claim to uphold. Liberals should have abandoned the Democratic Party when Bill Clinton and political hacks such as Biden transformed the Democratic Party into the Republican Party and launched a war on traditional liberal values and left-wing populism. They should have defected by the millions to support Ralph Nader and other Green Party candidates. This defection, as Nader understood, was the only tactic that could force the Democrats to adopt parts of a liberal and left-wing agenda and save us from the slow-motion corporate coup d'etat. Fear is the real force behind political change. Not only promises of mutual goodwill, short of this pressure, this fear, especially with labor unions destroyed, there is no hope. Now we reap the consequences of the liberal class as moral and political cowardice. The Democratic Party elites revel in taunting liberals, as well as the left-wing populists who preach class warfare, supported Bernie Sanders. How are we supposed to interpret the anointment of Anthony Blinken, one of the architects of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan in support of the apartheid state of Israel, as Secretary of State, or John Kerry, who championed the massive expansion of domestic oil and gas production, largely through fracking, and according to Barack Obama's memoir, worked doggedly to convince those concerned about the climate crisis to, quote, offer up concessions on subsidies for the nuclear power industry and the opening of the additional coastlines to offshore oil drilling. As the new climate policy czar, or Brian Deese, the executive who was in charge of the climate portfolio at BlackRock, who invests heavily in fossil fuels, including coal, and who served as the former Obama economic advisor who had advocated austerity measures to run the White House's economic policy, or Neera Tanden, for director of the Office of Management and Budget, who, as president of the Center for American Progress, raised millions in dark money from Silicon Valley and Wall Street, while relentlessly ridiculing Bernie Sanders and his supporters on cable news and social media, and who proposed a plank in the Democratic platform calling for bombing Iran. The Biden administration resembles the ineffectual German government formed by Franz von Papen in 1932 that sought to recreate the ancient regime, a utopian conservatism that ensured Germany's drift into fascism. Biden, bereft like Van Papen of new ideas and programs, will eventually be forced to employ the brutal tools Biden as a senator was so prominent in creating to maintain social control. Wholesale surveillance, a corrupt judicial system, the world's largest prison system, and police that have been transformed into lethal paramilitary units of internal occupation. Those that resist as social unrest mounts will be attacked as agents of a foreign power and censored, as many already are being censored, including through algorithms and deplatforming on social media. The most ardent and successful dissidents, such as Julian Assange, will be criminalized. And it goes on from there. That's what people got. So, for those of us who are progressive, we're looking for the truth, not an ideology. And in time, by challenging as we can, we'll make a difference. It won't be soon, though. I'm just trying to let you know, before you trust the old regime, Trump's, or the new one, Biden's, when it comes to COVID and vaccines and identity cards, maybe you should ask what rights you're giving up in the process, that once you've given them, you will not be able to ever get them back. Let us now go over to Great Britain. We're sending by is Elizabeth McCormick, and she has read your emails, and we'll see what one. And by the way, for our WBI listeners, we'll go for another 3 minutes, but for everyone else, we will continue on to the top of the hour with Elizabeth and the questions that you've asked or the information you're sharing. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi Gary, hi everyone, it's good to be here. A question today comes from Leonard. He says, respectfully, you are just one person against the machine. Isn't it all just a waste of time? My brother happens to feel you're foolish or delusional, thinking you can make a difference, as you do realize you're going up against all of corporate America, all the government agencies, all the mainstream media. It's why I feel I don't want to get involved in anything myself. Do we really think we can all make a difference? I'm not being cynical, just realistic. Comments, please.
This is not the first time that someone has suggested I'm delusional when it comes to making a difference. And indeed, I am not delusional because I know that on many cases I do not make a difference. The fact that I do not make a difference, that you do not see something happening that changes Citizens United from being completely expunged from our consciousness so that we do not allow small groups to control our future in elections. The fact that I'm delusional, thinking that knowing how bad the environment is and how worse it's going to become and how it's going to affect people means that people are going to make changes because of that information. I'm also not delusional when it comes to telling people who are every fork or knife that they use in a meal, they're putting something in their body that could be causing their early demise or disease, that they're going to change because they now have this new awareness. Information in and of itself does not mean transformation or change. Just getting people's attention is a challenge. So no, I'm fully aware of how insignificant that I am as an individual, but I'm not insignificant for the people whose lives I've helped one-on-one or in groups. I just watched something yesterday that I didn't even know existed, a 1995 longevity study, a year and a half, meeting once a month, and there were so many people, over 1,000 people, that we had to take a giant school auditorium on the east side. But there was the camera, and here's all these people who've been in this anti-aging study with great success.
From WPFW in Washington and WBAI in New York, I'm Sue Goodwin, and here are some headlines. Coronavirus has now infected over 14.7 million and killed over 282,000 people in the United States, according to data compiled by Johns Hopkins University. Globally, there have been over 67.2 million confirmed cases and over 1.5 million deaths. As the U.S. heads towards 15 million confirmed cases of COVID-19, new cases are averaging close to 200,000 a day. Experts warn those figures don't yet account for spikes related to Thanksgiving travel. Hospitals and 911 emergency call systems are being stretched to the breaking point as frontline health workers scramble to care for patients. COVID-19 vaccinations begin tomorrow in the UK with the first dose of Pfizer's recently approved injections. The limited supply of the initial 800,000 doses will go to nursing home staff and people over 80, as well as health and social care workers. Pfizer's vaccine involves a 2-dose regimen administered 21 days apart and requires sub-freezing storage at minus 70 degrees Celsius. The UK government ordered 40 million doses, which will be delivered through 2021. In the U.S., the Food and Drug Administration could approve the same vaccine by the end of the week. Tomorrow, the FDA will release its evaluation of vaccine safety and effectiveness data. What's next is a meeting on Thursday of the agency's Vaccine Advisory Committee, who will debate the data and decide if the FDA should clear the Pfizer vaccine for use in the United States. And Rudy Giuliani is the latest Trump associate to get coronavirus. Trump's personal attorney was exhibiting some symptoms and was admitted Sunday